talking about. What we are going to talk about this morning is consistency and versus intensity. And I think we probably need some of both. You know, I got to thinking in my earlier life, if it wasn't for the last minute, I'd never get anything done, you know, and so that makes, it can create a lot of intensity when you're, waiting to get the kids up to go to school at the last minute, and then it just puts everybody in a state of being, kind of frantic. But I was thinking too, when you think of this, like TJ was talking about, it's so much about, athletes. They do the consistency and the intensity. There's a story about two brothers, and they were runners, and one of them got out every morning and was consistent. He was just had a rhythm in his running, very consistent, very consistent, very consistent. And then the other brother would get out and he would go just as fast as he could every morning, every morning, every morning. So they both continue to be runners, and in their adult life, both of them became Olympic runners. So, it doesn't matter the speed you get there as long as you get there, and that was, just kind of stuck out to me, the difference, that one was just consistent, just loped along. I could just see, I had a horse and I could just see that horse loping, and then those sprinters that would go real fast. So we see consistency in athletes, and I was noticing this morning of Mary Ritter, is that her name? The gymnast. She's in the hospital, and I was thinking of her this morning about, and I had the opportunity to visit with her some. Anyway, I didn't know her personally, but I was able to visit with her some personally. Anyway, she put a lot of effort, a lot of consistency and intensity, and to be in a gymnast and set records that has never been set before or after. And she's in the hospital right now, and she's very, very ill. She's there in Houston in intensive care, and her daughter is asking for prayers for her. So let's, when you think about, when you say your prayers along the day, just keep her in mind. She's she's probably would be in her 60s by now, 50s, 60s, but anyway. All right, so athletes, it's very, important for them to, I say for them, but anyone that to exercise. I see people, and I've done it myself, join a gym and be all gung-ho and get there and get into that intensity, and I just wear myself out and wouldn't want to go back the next day. So there needs to be a balance of, both, but really consistency wins out. So just keep on doing, just keep on keeping on. My daughter Christy was sharing with us the other day at a group meeting that, there's businesses in Abilene too, and particularly that are celebrating, doing big things, celebrating 40 years of being in business. And they're small businesses, and they're celebrating their 40th year. And Christy said, Mother, we have been in business for 35 years. So we're going to celebrate it'll be in the spring, we're going to do a reunion. We haven't done a reunion since COVID. And I love doing reunions because we get people that a lot of times that have been here years and years ago and then new come anyway. So watch, because we're going to be doing a reunion like come spring. And one of the things about consistency in a business or whatever your endeavor is, you must keep putting effort into it. And we had a clinical director the first year or so that we were open, and ironically, she's our clinical director now. And what she would tell me, she said, Tennie, just keep putting in. If you put in one effort, you're going to get one effort back. If you put in two, you're going to get two back, three, you know. And so it's just the law of averages. The more efforts you put into something on a consistent basis, the better the results are. So we know that in athletes, we know that in business, and so stay tuned to our, you know, we'll send out notices way ahead of time about our 35th celebration of our 35th year. And, you know, any business worth its salt, I believe, the longevity, businesses recreate themselves. They, you know, can kind of get stagnant, and then depending on the field that they're in, they recreate themselves. So we're kind of in a creative state at Shades, recreating ourselves. And I am excited because of what we're going toward. And it's going to be, I'm not going to say it's going to be better. It is. It's going to be better. The field across the United States is changing. The whole field is changing. And we're changing with it by doing some really exciting things that I'm looking forward to. And I'm going to be back over there. I'm not going to be over there all the time, but I'm going to be over there because there's a lot of excitement over on the corner, and I can hardly wait to see how it all develops. And then consistency in our daily life. You know, consistency is not about perfection. It's about simply refusing to give up. And, you know, when I think about refusing to give up, I think about us at Shades of Hope, or any business worth their salt. I mean, if you just keep on keeping on. And, you know, I've read that most businesses, majority, particularly small businesses, only last 3 years. If they last 5 years, you really, most of the time, I mean, they will continue, but 3 years is usually the lifespan of most small businesses. So I'm excited about celebrating our 35th year. And it's about refusing to give up. Because I always have to think about our motive of being here and the work that we do. You know, it was never designed, Shades of Hope was never designed to be this great big treatment center. It was designed to be able to treat and do the type of work that we do with some clients, and not a great deal, because when you add numbers, yes, you're going to add dollars, but also the type of work we do, I think, takes a hit when there is so many, because it's so, anyway, I don't even know why I got into that. So consistency is really about refusing to give up. And consistency reduces stress. When you just keep on doing the next right thing, it reduces stress. Dale Carnegie, years ago, my son, he's been, was driven from the time he was 4 years old. He asked my son at 4, what do you want to be when you grow up? And he said, I want to be a millionaire. And he is many times over, but he's worked really hard. So when he got to junior high, he was one of the smaller kids, but he wanted to play football, and he knew what position of football he wanted to play. He didn't want to be the quarterback. He wanted to play on the defense. Anyway, but he had to have some size, and so he had me to research. We were doing every protein drink before protein drinks were ever invented. You know, I probably could have invented some, but we helped him, and he built up, and he became a very good athlete, and he won all district, all area, and but for someone to have looked at him in junior high school, they would have thought he'd never make a football player. And so he said, Mother, give me some motivational tapes. Well, there wasn't a lot of motivational tapes available. I went to the library and I went to the bookstore, and I only way, all of this has come about, later. And so I found a set of tapes of Dale Carnegie. And my son listened to them and listened to them and listened to them and listened to them. And one thing that Kelly was telling me, and I listened to him too, because I listened to him before I gave him to him. I wanted to make sure it was, appropriate. But one thing Dale Carnegie said, if you want to be the only thing a big shot is a big shot is a little shot that keeps on shooting. You just keep on shooting, shooting, shooting as a little shooter, and then you grow up to be a big shot in whatever. But anyway, Kelly, I think, listening to those Dale Carnegie tapes, who would have thought a freshman, a 14-year-old boy would want to listen to Dale Carnegie? He was a special kid then, he's a special man now, and he helps a lot of people. He's very wealthy, but he gives a lot of it away. All right, so I bragged on my side. I could brag on every one of my daughters, I'll tell you. But anyway, and I could brag on my grandson. We could spend the rest of the time bragging on my kids, because I do that very consistently. Consistency reduces stress. Intensity can bring on stress and anxiety. Intensity. Your body gets tense. Intensity. Your body gets tense. You got to get this done, and you got to get that done, and you got to get something else done. I'm looking at my friend Jenny. She's got 3 little boys. 2 of them are the same age. They're twins. And I'm just anxious, to watch those boys grow up, because I don't know their father, but I know they have a wonderful mother. And I suspect there's a lot of intensity in that household, but there's also a lot of consistency. When you raise kids, you better get consistent. And when my husband's got into AA, and his first sponsor came out, and he wanted to meet with us, my husband and I, and we sat at the kitchen table, and I thought he was going to be talking about AA and the 12 steps and, all of that. And what he talked about was consistency in going to meetings. And, by that time, I've been going to Al-Anon for 14 years. I'd been consistent in going to Al-Anon for 14 years. And I would go to open AA meetings, and I would go to OA meetings, and I would go to Al-Anon meetings, and I would go usually to a meeting a day, at least one a day, sometimes 2 or 3. It takes a lot for some of us, but I could, there'd be turmoil in the family or whatever, at work or whatever, and I could go and sit in a meeting and just calm down. So that's what Otto taught us. Was teaching RL. He said consistent, and he said be consistent with your kids. And he's, in alcoholism, a lot of times as parents, because of the alcoholism, we give up the parenting roles, and I had kind of become the mother and the father. And our sponsor told him, he said, you're going to suit up and show up for these kids. And Otto was a little old bitty squirt of a man. He wasn't very big, but he was powerful. And he worked with my husband and consistently. But he told RL, he said, you be consistent. You have been a consistent SOB for years. Now you're going to flip that, and you're going to be a consistent good husband and father. And Otto taught him. This is where people that don't qualify or they're not in a program, they miss that. They miss that fellowship and that direction. So, and we were both benefited a lot by Otto. And he helped us so much in our relationship. Sometimes we can teach what we don't practice. You know, he was on his fourth wife, and she divorced him because he was gone so much, being a sponsor anyway. But he taught us a lot. So that's, you know, he taught us what not to do, for one thing. And so my mother used to, when I've always been pretty thorough in whatever I did. I would have some intensity in whatever I did, but I'd also be consistent. So my mother would always say if she wanted the kitchen cleaned up real fast, if someone was coming over or something, she'd want my sister to do it because she could just get in there and get it done and it would look good. But she would, you know, find dirty plates and dirty silverware when, you know, I mean, because she just do it real fast. That's intensity. And she'd always say if she wanted it done real good, she would have me do it because I was consistent and it would take me forever. I cleaned every inch of that kitchen. So that's just a little side story. So it is important to have that consistency in our program. I cannot say enough about consistency in working a program. And it is very easy to get off track. And, you know, think of the things that you do on a consistent basis and how you have benefited from them. You know, I've got some things, some habits that I've consistently done all of my life, my entire life. And one of them is prayer meditation. Now, do I do it perfect? No. But I do. And I do some form of prayer meditation every single solitary day. You know why I do? It doesn't make me perfect. It makes me willing, and because it works. You know, if I don't make conscious contact, and I was told by one of my first sponsors, make conscious contact with people. I mean, with, with God before you make conscious contact with people. And you're less likely to mess up the day. And so, you know, that consistency of inviting God into your day, and then the consistency, you know, if things don't go real good during the day, push the pause button, stop, and invite him back in. It's okay, God, come back in here. You know, I've taken over control. And so think of the things, because I know all of you do things on a consistent basis, or you wouldn't be where you are. You wouldn't be where you are. I was watching and I know she doesn't like to talk, and I'm not going to ask her to, but I was watching a football game the other day, and one of the coaches, I can't remember the team, it was an NFL team, our pro team, and I remember that my friend T that's on here, she used to be athletic director in Seattle, one of the first women to ever be an athletic director. And that coach that was coaching that pro football team was one of her students. So I know my friend T and what she taught her folks, her students, and then her coaches was consistency. And I would love her to talk about it, but I'm not going to force her to because sometimes she doesn't like to talk. But I did want to single her out in that, you know, that coach is coaching one of the best pro football teams in the nation. And it started with having an athletic director that taught him well. So I think she also had him as a student, but that's her story to tell. But anyway, I want you to think of things that you do on a consistent basis. You know, one of the things that I have always enjoyed a clean house. I'm not as fanatic as I used to be, but hey, I'm the only one here. Kim and I are the only one here. And so, but I consistently do a little bit in my house. every day. That's what, you know, Susan taught me, you know, Susie, put in, you know, effort to do something. If you're going to put in, you know, so I put in effort, a little effort, 3 or 4 efforts every day on my house. I do something every day. And by 9 o'clock in the morning, anyone could come in my house and find the house put together. And I hate to say it, but that's pretty much how it looked when when my husband and I were raising a house full of kids. And today I wished I had a messier house, but I was raised those kids like a staff sergeant, and they knew to pick up their stuff, and you know, so we were consistent in that household. And so sometimes you can move in consistency into intensity, and I was intense about my house. I'm not so much anymore, but it's a pattern that I have. And anytime anyone can walk in my house and I'm not in, you know, it's not a mess because I've cleaned up. The only one that messes up today is me, and I get to clean up my own mess. Another thing I do consistently is I have lunch with my daughters 5 days a week. 5 days a week, that's consistent. We meet as a family. During the football season, Cam and Christy graciously invite us up to their house on Sundays. That's consistent. That's something you can count on. We do, you know, so find things that you do consistent, particularly if you have children. Children love consistency. They love something that they can count on. And then, that's our daily life. And then in the relationships, consistent actions in a relationship and behavior becomes, it's so important in relationships to be consistent. You know, like my husband's sponsor told him, now if you're going to be an SOB, continue to be one like you were when you were drunk. Be a consistent one. Don't be, you know, sweet and nice one day and hateful the next, you know, because your kids, your wife will never know what to expect. So be consistent. Like I said, we all have bad days, but speak about it. Speak it out loud when you're having a bad day. Speak it out loud, you know, and just because a lot of times, particularly if people can't set healthy boundaries that you're in relationships with, if you're in a bad place or having a bad day, they'll invariably think it's about them, and they'll take it on if they can't set healthy boundaries. So if you're in a bad place, speak it out loud and just say it. You don't have to go into detail, but you know, just say, I am not my best self today, kids, but I'll be back, don't worry. And I'll be back to the old me. And so when we can tell the truth about ourselves, and you know, we're, like I said, we're not going to do this deal called life perfect. We're not. But the best thing we can do is whatever we do it with consistency, particularly if you're raising children. Children need to know what to count on. Employees need to know what to count on. I'm embarrassed to say this, but when I first started Shades of Hope, a lot of my healing, the majority of my healing took place after I opened Shades of Hope. We knew nothing about codependency then, and I had not touched the sexual abuse. I had not, because there wasn't any talk about it. There wasn't any, anyway, it came later when I went to treatment for trauma. I went down for a 30-day trauma program in Florida. But what was happening, I was a rager. I was such a rager that my staff was scared of me. I would walk in and I would hear them. I mean, they would scatter like little mice because they never knew what they were going to deal with. And so I was consistently, I was consistently in a bad mood. That is hard to put on a staff. That is hard. And they stayed clear of me. You know, I think back of some of the ways that I would treat a staff member. I'm embarrassed about myself, and I'll tell you, I've had to make lots of amends for my behavior. But I'll tell you what, God removed that rage from me. I have a whole story about it. And I'll tell you how long it's been. It's as old as my grandson is, and he's 21. We were building that new building, and my daughter Christy was pregnant with him. And so it's been 21 years that I have not had to rage. And I am as grateful for that recovery as I am for my eating disorder and alcoholism and other things and codependency. And so, like I said, I've had to go back and make lots of amends. But I was consistent. They knew what to count on when I walked in, because if they crossed me, I would be horrible to them. I'm not that way today. I have had an opportunity to work with some Germans, not Germans, a group of Russians. They were over here in the U.S. studying how to put in treatment centers. Had a friend down at Florida, and her brother owned a slew of treatment centers, and so they were here for months, 6 months, I think, and they would visit different treatment centers and different modalities and all. And so the last leg of their journey was in Florida with my friend Barbara, and we were really on the cutting edge of codependency at that time. No one was talking about codependency. Melody was, several of your big people back in those days, I mean, what I'm talking about in the field, but just 2 or 3. It was very young in codependency. So her brother contracted with her and with me to work with these Russians, and for a week, and they all went to Florida. I went down to Stuart, Florida, and we worked with them for a week. And they couldn't speak much English, and we certainly couldn't speak Russian. But you know, recovery, talking about addictions, it's a language of the heart. And so we did everything we did was really experiential type of therapy, and they got it. They really got it. And there's one woman in the group that was, had these chipmunk, swollen up glands here on her face. I knew she was a bulimic. We wasn't there really to, confront anyone about anything. We were teaching. This was a teaching moment to teach them about codependency and give them examples and do the experiential therapy and all. And so one of the doctors on there started pointing at this woman, and he said that she would do this, like eat, and then go, They all got to doing it. They all knew that she was a purging bulimic, and they all got to doing that, like they were eating and purging. And that woman broke down. She broke down crying. Long story short, she stayed there at Barbara's, and then later came out here and did some work with us. And so what I told that whole story to say, because of that workshop, that we were willing to do that workshop, at the end, what that woman said is that she had taken a liking to herself. She had taken a liking to herself. She said that in English. And that's what happened to me 21 years ago when God removed rage from me. I've taken a liking to myself more than I ever have, because I don't act the way I used to act. I did not like myself when I did that, and I couldn't stop myself. I was addicted to the rage. Rage goes through the same addiction cycle as drugs, alcohol, food, because every addiction starts deep in our stomach with a feeling. We feel, and that those feelings work up and up and up and up. Then it tells our brain what to do. And, what it would tell my brain is to rage, and I would explode in rage. And then the next thing it would tell me, I would come around to that, in that addiction cycle. After I would rage, I'd have so much guilt and remorse, so much guilt and remorse. And then I would get to feeling the guilt and remorse. And then the guilt and remorse would tell me how I could feel better. It would tell my brain, go eat. And so I'd go through two, cycles of addiction right there. So anyway, so I have taken a liking to myself, and I hope each one of you take a liking to yourselves. So it's not what we do once in a while. It's not what we do once in a while that really changes our lives. What changes our lives is what we do on a consistent basis. Consistency on a consistent basis. So think about how you are consistent. What do you do on a consistent basis? Another thing that I do, and I want to tell you, I'm not throwing bouquets at myself. What I'm saying is I had some good sponsoring. I had some good sponsorship. And when you have someone feeding into your life year after year after year after year after year, it takes. And so every night before I go to sleep, I do a 10 step. I may not write it down. I may be too tired, but I go over my day and I do that 10 steps. So that's consistency. And in the program of any 12-step program, you can work, and I've seen people come into treatment and get all excited and get so intense. They're going to do this and they're going to do that, and they want to work those steps the next 3 days. And, they'll come to us. They've already done the steps, and they've done, and I've seen that with people in the program. They get so gung-ho, and before you know it, they're drunk or they're binging. They're off and running again in an addiction. So what is the best thing, I think, is, addictions are intense. We have a lot of intensity around any addiction. I believe recovery is about consistency. Just put in effort every day, every day, every day. Put a little effort in, a little effort in, a little effort in, and you'll be surprised what you have at the end to take out. You put in and then you take the good stuff out. You put in and God gives you back the good stuff. So that's what I have about intensity and consistency. And I've got some people on here that have practiced both. And I hope y'all will share about how your program has worked and how hard you have worked and the effort that you have put in and what you've gotten back from that consistency. So who wants to start? And what's happened when you don't, when you get to quit being consistent with your recovery? Who wants to start?